So, Baba back in the mid-20s said to the boys there at Meherabad, "What is higher than the sky?" And the kids gave all sorts of answers and everything. And in the end, Baba said, "A mother's love, higher than
Oh,
the sky."
Ivana Mac.
So, so most of you know Vesta, but in case you're new, uh, just to mention that back in the after Baba dropped his body, there was a kind of steady stream from the west of Baba lovers, mainly younger people, and we didn't know what it was going to be like to get to India. Very, very, we had no idea how magnificent it would be at Meherabad and Meherazad. And the mandali, rather than being these very high spiritual souls, so to speak, were just like our favorite aunts and uncles. And they welcomed us with open arms. It was a beautiful time. I know many of you enjoyed that. And Vesta was one of those young people that came. And being a nurse, that she was needed to help initially with Dr. Goher, who had a severe back pain, and so she got to stay there at Meherazad. And so what we get from Vesta are some of the glimpses of Meherazad after hours with the mandali. And so, and being she was I think 24 or 25 at the time, so we get pretty young and spontaneous and colorful view of those days. And so I'm going to, turn it over to her. And she also welcomes questions. So if you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to ask. And so, Vesta, you're out there somewhere.
I
Can you
am.
hear? So the floor is yours. No, I should mention she's got two topics. One is Dr. Goer's view on the magnificence of creation. What a topic, the magnificence of creation. And the other thing that she's going to share is Dr. Goer's grief. So just, put on your seatbelts and we'll take off here. All right,
I
Vesta?
thought, yeah, that's so funny that you said that, Jeff, because I've been calling Betty Loman, Betty Davis, and one time I said to her, "Come on, pick up the phone. We're waiting for you on the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane." So I just said that to her a couple days ago. So when you mentioned put on your seatbelts, remember that famous line of Betty Davis when she said, "Well, it's going to be a mighty bumpy ride tonight, so put on your seatbelts, folks, or men, or whatever she said."
Yeah,
Remember that?
okay.
So
Beautiful.
anyway, so here's a couple things I want to say at the very beginning. I thought my chemotherapy and radiation, once I ended it the day before Baba's birthday on February 24th, I thought that was it. I was just going to get rid of it a few days later and I'd go back to normal. Little did I know, and I had a long conversation with my gynecological oncologist on Monday because I had a long appointment with him. It was a wonderful appointment. He explained to me that part of what I'm experiencing is all the dead cancer being absorbed in my body because the chemotherapy and the radiation is still working because my body has absorbed it all. So, anyway, so I apologize for wanting to read again, but I've been struggling with my thought process and I don't like the feeling. So it's more about my feeling comfortable sharing this. And I know I won't screw it up if I read it, but I'm going to depend on all of you to ask questions because there's going to be a lot of questions on what I'm going to share with you. And that'll help me when I write the book to hopefully address those questions so that anybody reading isn't left with like, "Oh gosh, I wish I'd have known this," or "I wish you'd explain this," or "Oh gosh, you know." So it's going to help me to help those who read about this, hopefully, understand, have a deeper understanding, and be able to to experience what I experienced on a deeper level. So that's why it's important that, I mean, I like to talk contemporaneously, and I can do that when you ask questions. I can't do that when I'm relating the story, because I don't know what Baba's doing with me, but my memory bank. I just had a 2.5 hour conversation with Jacko before I started this, and literally the memories that popped up were just absolutely phenomenal. So that's what's happening to me right now. So I'm going to have to read, but please don't hesitate asking questions. And there's no question that's not important enough to be asked if it's in your head. And part of the reasons why I like the questions, and Betty can attest to this, Jacko can attest to this, um, several other Baba lovers that I talked to, Dr. Bob, uh, Renee Bisanich, that when we have a conversation, all this stuff comes up between us. So that's what I'm hoping I can have with all of you, because the reason I'm extending myself to this level is because I think these stories are important to share, because it humanizes the mandali and it removes them from becoming archetypes, because those coming after us aren't going to have the personal experiences. And it's really easy to make somebody into something that they may not have been, just because you don't know, you didn't have the experience. So please ask questions, and please bear with me as I read. I'll try and not make it too boring. I know I did get a couple of people say, gee, I wish you wouldn't read. A couple of people said, we was watching your expressions. And I said, yeah, you like watching me scratch myself to death as my skin was peeling off my body. But anyway, so here we go. So this is Goher and the Magnificence of Creation. And I give a little historical context here, so you kind of get where I was as just a neophyte to spiritual experience, and Goher just a few years after Baba left his physical form, of which, you know, pretty much he was in charge of. Okay, here I go. At night, when the day was done, Dr. Goher and I would stand out back at the edge of the field, off the veranda behind the main house kitchen in Meherazad. We would commune with Baba for a few minutes and hold hands. This was our nightly ritual. We would walk out into the night and gaze up at Seclusion Hill after we had brushed our teeth to be ready for sleep. At times, she would stand in front of me and lean into me. I would wrap my arms around her, placing them over her shoulders. Being much taller than Goher, I could clasp my hands together below her chest and gently hold her. Other times, she would put her arm around my waist as she stood at my side. With her other hand, she would rub my arm or gently place her hand over my heart. Sorry, I'm in a more emotional state this week than I have been, so I apologize if I'm breaking up and reading here. Oftentimes we stood in silence. Other times she spoke of her feelings about the life she had with her beloved. I could feel the solace she felt when she spoke of her memories. It evoked a depth of emotions in me I had never experienced, holding a spiritual breath I knew not existed. Other times my heart was seared by strikes of lightning as she shared parts of her life that were so painful for her to recall. She told me that after graduating and becoming a doctor, she worried that Baba might not call her. And when he did, she questioned whether she was worthy to serve him. She told me how her parents had wanted her to marry, and this almost cost her the chance to join Baba because of her hesitancy. And I don't go into more of this aspect of Goher's life because it's all in Shelley's book, and it's in detail, and it's right from Goher personally, and Shelley did all her research to do that. So I'm not going to say anything that's in Shelley's book, because that book is going to be worth hanging on every word. Okay. I sense the panic must have evoked in her. I sense the panic this must have evoked in her as she spoke of those times of her younger years. But my heart ached when she shared the agony she experienced as his doctor during these moments. And during these moments, it's when lightning struck my soul. Most of the time, I understood I was experiencing a rapture so divine, it was the envy of angels. I was stunned while listening to Goher lament how she felt so helpless and medically inadequate to relieve Baba's pain. She spoke of second guessing herself because her medical diagnosis and the treatment she prescribed for him provided no relief and he remained in an agonized state. The torment and guilt she felt when she was unable to relieve his suffering seared my heart, especially when she lowered her voice to express disappointment in her service to her beloved. At times, his condition was so severe and serious that she could not provide medical relief and called for doctors from Ahmednagar or Pune. She would have them examine him. She spoke of the distress and embarrassment she felt with those doctors who would travel a long distance to examine Baba, only to find him rosy cheeked, smiling, and in good spirits. I find your Meher Baba to be in good spirits and healthy, they would say as they left his room. She shared the hopelessness she experienced when he would not take her advice about his diet, especially when he would fast when he was unwell. She spoke of the restlessness she experienced when Baba would not eat food and that she had prescribed to help his health. She said she let Baba down repeatedly because all that she knew about medical care offered no cure to his discomfort and physical agony. Sometimes Goher would chuckle when she told of how Baba would feed his beloved dog all the special food she or Mehera had prepared for his meal, especially the food they had sent for from outside. Most often it was from Bombay for pomfret, a delicate fish they would receive from Bindra House or Baba's family in Pune. Sometimes the Dada Chandjis would send on ice beautiful pomfret fish to Meherazad for Baba. At times they would send for bombil, which is another type of fish, of which Naja would make a special chutney. They would complain when they would complain to Baba about not eating properly and giving food prepared for him to the dog. His dog was Mustan, and Baba loved that dog, Mustan. Baba would smile and tell them, I am in my dog, and his enjoyment is also mine. I feel quite satisfied, he'd say with a glimmer. Goher would grin as she pointed with her index finger and raised her right hand, gently moving it up and down, and said, Baba could be quite naughty. There were times she would ask me questions too. Some I knew to answer with a bit of humor, and others I knew to let just dangle and be held gently in the night air. No response was really needed. No answer was possible to some of the questions she asked. When we walked out past the little hut and reached the edge of the field, I never spoke first. Never. I knew she was allowing me entry into a private and sacred space she held dear. I knew to keep quiet unless she said something first. Most likely the first wise decision I made in my 24 years. I came to realize later that if I had been intrusive or inappropriate, I am positive these precious moments I was fortunate to share with Goher would have been short-lived. I would have missed out on so much that has deep meaning for me to this day. And part of the reason I wouldn't talk is because sometimes she wouldn't say a word. We were just quiet. We'd just stand there quietly looking at Seclusion Hill. And after a while, she would just bow her head and fold her hands and say, Jai Baba, and grab my hand, and we'd go back to the house. So I don't know, that was totally Baba's grace that had this 24-year-old punk, be quiet and let me know if I should talk or be quiet and just listen, or we should just stand in silence. So that was totally his grace. It had nothing to do with my being, I don't know, appropriate. These moving and intimate times with Goher became more precious as time passed. She was a woman whose tenderness is legendary. Her hands were said to be the softest in the world, like a silk purse that had been lined with velvet. I cannot imagine anyone other than Goher whom Meher Baba would call to be a part of his household and to regularly tend to his medical care and that of his close ones. She was remarkable, really. As tender as she was in heart, she was strong in character and smart as a whip. In the early 1940s, Meher Baba sent Goher to medical school in Bombay, where she lived with Arnavaz's family while studying. I think it was the late 30s, but I have to check that. And all this will be checked with editing before the book is going out, because I don't want any misstatements in here that can be avoided. Goher is one of the 4 women who accompanied Meher Baba on the new life phase of his avatarhood. She remained steadfast and at his side the entire time, a feat with no comparison. It was during this period in the avatar's advent that her resilience and determination to serve her beloved was tempered under unimaginable hardship and trying circumstances. During the new life, Meher Baba became her constant companion until her last breath on June 30th, 2004 in Meherazad. From the moment he called Goher, she always sought his pleasure in her life. And just as an aside, part of the reason why I love talking with Dr. Bob is because he's the one who took care of Goher until the very end. And my head's at his feet for what a loving man he is. What a great soul. He was so good to Goher. She loved him. And one of the things he shared with me, and I hope it's in Shelley's book, is that Shelley used to tease Goher and Dr. Bob because Bob would sit on her bed and, and touch her, and they would chat and stuff. And so she always called them sweethearts meeting. So I always liked that image of him being her sweetheart because he was so tender with her. And Goher loved Dr. Bob. Okay. The love I felt emanating from Goher as we stood gazing at Seclusion Hill was a soothing balm to me, a young woman who felt so broken. 2 months before coming to India, I had been sexually assaulted and left by the roadside in Ojai. Although nothing as deep as Goher felt, I was tormented, feeling deep shame, unworthy. I was without purpose. I had come to India for darshan at the 1974 Amartithi, and afterward was going up to the Himalayas and throw myself into a gorge. I was so shattered that I had romanticized suicide as a fitting end to the shame and depression that had caught me. But then Goher, Arnavaz, and Meherazad became my lifeline, and Mehera showed me how to transfer the grip I had with Meherazad into his daman, as I observed her tenderness with her beloved Baba. This was all his grace. Standing at Goher's side while gazing up at Seclusion Hill seemed to tether me to the planet. It grounded me through an abundance of love, compassion, and the security I felt at Meherazad. Baba literally had given me a second chance at life through the tenderness of the quiet times with Goher. I couldn't wait for the sun to set on the day and for the stars to light up the evening sky. I remember Goher telling me that the stars that we were looking at just might be the eyes of angels looking down on his home. Isn't that a beautiful image? That when you look, and I hope none of you will ever look at a star and not think, wow, Goher said once that the stars were the eyes of angels looking down. I just think that's just a sweet image. Oh, I say that. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Can you see how I go off? I love this image he created. To this day, I never looked at the sky without remembering that moment. Okay, I have to change the page. These cherished moments with Goher sustained me, an intimacy with the divine beyond measure. I felt so shy at first, intimidated by the experience. I was so raw emotionally and so naive about much of the world. More than naive, I was spiritually immature. I could not help but see myself as a beggar, suffering from hunger and thirst, a beggar who had not been invited to a feast that was literally laid out in front of me. And the image that I had in my head was it's all there. All I had to do was, pull up my chair to the table where I could reach. But I kind of kept myself aloof emotionally, mentally, because I felt so unworthy. And I'm sharing this because I can't believe there's not a human on the planet that hasn't had that experience. But look how Baba transformed it, and it's really helped me when other things have happened that weren't so much fun. Shame kept me at bay, and all I could do was sneak a peek into the tavern of love from the outside. Although I considered myself fortunate to be able to watch those who were seated inside, a pane of glass separated us. That jolly crowd was warm inside, while I stood outside in the cold. As my fingers gripped the windowsill, my nose was pressed against the pane of glass. My breath formed ice crystals as I looked on with envy. Physically, it was a thin window pane that separated me from this jolly crowd. But because of the lack of self-worth that isolated me, I felt as if I was light years away, standing on a distant planet. How could I be this close, yet feel so all alone? Why did I remain out in the dark, trapped in yearning, wishing to have what they all were reveling in, when I was mere steps from the threshold? I mean, I bet if I asked anybody to raise their hand who's had that feeling, everybody would raise their hand. I mean, why did I remain out in the dark, trapped in yearning, wishing to have what they all were reveling in, when I was a mere few steps from the threshold? I imagined everything about this sacred room of the tavern. It became an apt image in my mind's eye. Inside, the fireplace warmed the diners as minstrels sang in virgins danced. I don't know why I wrote virgins, but I'm going to leave it in here because I think it talks about the purity of the moment. But I don't think you have to be a virgin to dance, and I don't think all dancers are virgins. But anyway, that was what what came out of me. So I'm going to leave it in there. I may change it when the book gets written. I intuitively knew this feast was the envy of queens and kings. Royalty reigns over kingdoms and gathers worldly wealth to their side. Yet in my heart, I knew they were truly impoverished in comparison to the motley crew I was watching inside the Tavern of Love. Monarchs who draped themselves in silk, velvet, and lace would have been comfortably perched upon crudely made wooden chairs and benches. They would be out of place, seated among the cast of characters whose garments were roughly woven wool costumes. Plus, no one seated in the tavern wore jewels or had manicured hands in an ostentatious display of fancy. The beautifully perfumed and coiffed hair of royalty that glistened with rare scented oils would have been out of place in the tavern. The simplicity of the knife-cut hair of the men inside, some who used a bowl for measuring, was no match to powdered wigs, yet was absolutely perfect. Some men seated at the table just plopped a grease-stained hat atop their head, covering scraggly hair that had been roughly shorn. And I'm going to add in the book that all the royalty would have been welcomed with great love and affection, but I'm trying to make the point that you don't have to be rich or fill the offering plates or sit in a certain pew or any of that kind of stuff to get into heaven or experience divine love. Just be yourself. Okay, the women in the tavern were equally innocent, free from guile. No crown rested upon their heads, no string of diamonds, rubies, or emeralds circled their necks. Instead, their faces were framed by uneven curls, made by winding their hair around shredded lengths of cloth, which they tied up until dry, forming ringlets when unwound. They covered their heads with bonnets they made while sitting fireside at night, some with a bit of lace at the edge to make her feel fancy, maybe a tad fancy, not too fancy. No one in this tavern had handsome guards standing at attention at their cottage. No men in armor with swords hanging at their side were needed. Nope. These jolly women and men had a door key hung around their necks on a braided string, or their key was tucked into a pocket with the button closed or placed in their shoe. In my mind, they all had redefined elegance. Why? Because each had been chosen to dine with the Lord. What is more elegant than this? See how, what an innocent, that I share in detail kind of my vision of what was going on, even though I was standing right next to Goher. But I saw that I'd kept myself so distant, even while holding her hand or my arm around her. There was a distance. And it wasn't a distance I felt with her, but I felt the distance with her experience, which she was trying to give to me without reservation. And so I conjured in my mind this thing about the lane of love from hearing Hafiz and Rumi and Baba talk about that. And that was what I created. It was just innocent and safe and pure, and anybody was welcome. And you didn't have to be rich. You didn't have to be anything other than yourself. So that's why I'm leaving that in, although some people thought it was way too much discussion. But anyway, I realized there would never be enough gold and silver or precious gems and jewels in anyone's treasury to buy entry into this tavern of love. No, entry was by his invite. I knew I had to leave the suffering and pain I had experienced in the world behind once I crossed the threshold. It was baggage that weighed me down, self-imposed, and to drop the hold of misery on my heart was my passage through the eye of the needle. And I bring up the eye of the needle because that was a fascinating story for me in Bible study as a Christian, where it was said, that it's more difficult for a man, I can't think of it, to pass through the eye of a needle with his baggage filled with gold or something like that. Anyway, still reluctant to enter the tavern, in my mind I continued to watch the merriment inside the tavern. Handmade candles set atop roughly hewn tabletops flickered, dripping melted wax down the candlesticks holding them. Tables were laden with steaming bowls of stew. Warm bread and cups of churned butter were placed at the table center. Chunks of cheese on earthen plates were next to overflowing goblets of wine, the beloved's nectar. I rested my chin on my hands on the windowsill, enchanted by the warm glow that lit the room. Candlelight swayed upward into the air, churned by the swirling skirts of the virgins, and I began to grow weary of being a passive observer. Time passed slowly at first, but by his grace I realized I could enter the tavern. Of course I could. I knew the innkeeper. The invitation to join his feast had always been open. Unbeknownst to me, I had a reserved seat, and it was being held open for me by the tavern keeper. It was me who kept myself aloof from what can only be described as a feast where unconditional love is served up in abundance. Wrapping myself in a cloak glassed with lavender essence, I turned, and I remember thinking lavender essence because Eric loved the scent of lavender. Anyway, I turned to the doorway, and with my right foot, I crossed the threshold. As the sole of my foot touched the sawdust spread on the floor, I breathed deeply, eagerly taking in the mystical aroma of divine magic. It was a fragrance the Magi's too had touched. I found inner peace about my place at the table. Emotional balance centered me. I'll never forget that feeling. That was the first time I felt spiritually, emotionally, and mentally and physically all in the same place at once. And I'm going to add that in. Once I entered the tavern, my time with Goher at night became relaxed, an unmatched enjoyment I can still touch today. We all can experience this joy because we are his. Baba is holding the door open for us to come through and take a place at his banquet table. To this day, I treasure our nightly routine and vividly remember how we would gaze up at Seclusion Hill before retiring, hand in hand like schoolgirls. That's what I loved about the women. They were so wise, but yet they really kept that inner child, that child. Instead of being childish, they were childlike, and there's a big difference. And that was what was so beautiful. They could be so innocent and so wise at the same time. Sometimes Goher stood quietly. Other times she would recall how she worried about how Baba's health was when he was in seclusion in the tin shed up on the hill. "Are you safe from the blowing wind, my darling?" she would ask, her words captured by the night air. "Are you warm enough?" she would whisper as bats flew by in the darkness. This was her standing next to me as if she was talking to Baba. She was remembering what it was like looking at him up in the tin shed on Seclusion Hill. And she was asking these questions. "Do you have enough to eat and have hot tea to drink?" she queried as a lone village dog bayed in the distance. Many a night, the beat of the distant village drums gently rose into the stillness of the night. I knew that in these tender moments of concern for the compassionate one, he was most certainly in that tin shed up on the hill. I knew he was basking in the love of his doctor. Once again, for she was the woman who served him with such devotion. Her whispered voice, so tender with longing for her master, begged the question in my mind: how could he remain aloof from her in this moment? And as an aside, it was in this moment when she was so convinced that he was in that shed and she had to still care for him. It was so pure. He had to have known he just had to have known that. How could he remain aloof from her in this moment? It was the beauty of her love that changed the ambience to one of such, okay, I say this, see, I'm going to try not to go off the rails again because obviously the memory comes up, but I've written it down, so I apologize. It was the beauty of her love that changed the ambience to one of such purity that I felt its presence myself. I'm sorry, what, Jeff?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I would come to know as
Vesta, go on ahead. Yeah. Are you folks hearing Vesta?
No, she's on mute.
Oh, Vesta, you're on mute.
You're muted, Vesta. You have to unmute. Vesta.
okay, just a minute.
Okay.
I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm back. I
Good.
have to get back into the article. Okay. There were nights. Okay, sorry. It was the beauty of her love that changed the ambience to one of such purity that I felt his presence myself. I would come to know as our love grows for Meher Baba, he could not resist the call of our hearts too. And this is where the beauty of Baba explaining to us that we're all one soul, but different minds. It's okay to say, I felt his presence because Goher was feeling his presence and I was right there with her. And if he was in her presence, he had to be in mine. And if we're all one soul, he was in all of our presence. We just didn't know it at the time. Okay. There were nights when Goher stood silently, clasping my hands tighter than usual. Sometimes she placed her face in her hands and gently wept. There were certain moments when she just stared up at the hill and whispered, Baba, why did you leave us? Baba, why did you leave us? I learned as time passed that these were moments of deep grief she was feeling. Her shoulders would bend slightly downward as she let tears gently roll down her cheeks. During these moments, she spoke of how much she missed him. Sorry. Betty, I need help.
What do you
I
want?
can't see who's on. Is Irene there?
I don't see Irene, but take your time, Vesta.
Yeah, just take a moment, Vesta. Yeah.
But I don't want to bore people by stopping.
No.
We're listening very
Yeah.
concentratedly.
Okay.
Thank you. We're listening to every word.
Okay.
And not bored at all. Not bored. Just
Bored is
loving this. Loving it.
No
So
way.
beautiful.
no, this is vital.
It's tender, it's honest, it's beautiful.
During these moments, she spoke how much she missed him. She wept because she felt she failed to shield him from sickness and was oftentimes unable to relieve his suffering. Through cool tears, she would describe in, sorry, I have to get to another page. My fingers aren't working. What's set in is all the neuropathy, and my hands are numb, my fingers don't work. So it's taking me a little bit of time to change. She would explain in detail her feelings when she could not help him. A pain that had a tight grip on her and was excruciating. It was a pain that cut her to the quick. I loved it when she would describe the look in his eyes when she tended to him. She spoke in detail of his compassion, his love, of seeing his divinity while tending to his human form. There were times she would ask, to no one in particular, certainly not seeking an answer from me, a 24-year-old kid. Do you think Baba has forgiven me? This question burned my heart, singeing it to the core. Lightning struck my heart when she asked this question. I was literally flabbergasted, stunned. Goher was the most compassionate and selfless person I knew, or I know. I could sense the heaviness of her grief and weight on this crushing thought. She had asked this question several times before. I realized that this feeling, this question, and her feeling of guilt was like a marble rolling around in her head, in her skull, a perpetual motion, and it needed release. I remember feeling so stunned she would even think like this. See, I was caught up in thinking these people had to be perfect to be around Baba. So they were kind of an archetype to me. So I'm so grateful that I had these glimpses into their humanity and can share it with all of you, because the lessons I learned are lessons that have helped me in my life and on my spiritual journey. And I'm hoping if I can just touch one of you with one lesson, then I feel like Baba's happy with all this writing and the time that it's taken. So anyway, sorry, I went off again. I realized that I remember feeling so stunned she would even think like this. I was too taken aback and shy to reply. So the question hung heavily in the night air when she asked it, thick like a blinding, vicious fog that makes seeing clearly impossible. However, one night, as fate would have it, maybe a year or so later, she again asked this question. Vesta, do you think he can forgive me? This time I had the answer. Without hesitation, I replied with great tenderness, there's nothing to forgive, Goher. There's nothing to forgive. She looked up at me and said, oh, Mara Bacha, that's my child in Gujarati. Thank you. Her voice took on the soft sound of an innocent child and had such purity to it. There were times as we stood in that sacred spot when the earth ceased spinning and time stopped for me. This was one of them. I wept with her, my tears cascading down and landing on the top of her head. When tender moments like this took place, I would put my arms around her in my feeble attempt to offer comfort for a pain I could not fathom, and we would sob to a melody only Baba heard. In these moments of tenderness, I could feel my own shames and regrets being absorbed by his grace and knew he was holding us both close. I could hear a beautiful melody as his angels softly strummed their fingers across golden harp strings. And the reason this paragraph is so important is because didn't Baba tell us there's really no sin. There's no good or bad. There's just things that happen that have consequences and lessons. So in that moment, I felt so much shame taken from me that I had nothing to be ashamed of. So anyway, and then those words came from my mouth, so why wasn't I going to believe it for myself? So anyway, just a second, my dog. I have a 2-year-old, she'll be 2-year-old in July, and a 12-year-old. And sometimes the 2-year-old stands at the steps of the deck and dares the 12-year-old to come past her. So Persia Rose is out there griping at me. Oh, call Sojourner. Sojourner, come. Okay. There were several times we both wept. My tears would land on her head. In comic relief, she would look up at me and say, my child, you have given me a head bath. Come now, we must go wash our faces and dry my head. She would smile, that toothy smile that only Goher had, and sometimes even chuckle. Then, clasping my hand for balance, she would say, she would say as she headed back, as we headed back to the house, Mehera must not know we were crying. We have to catch hold of ourselves before we enter the house. I never questioned the meaning of this. Okay. I never questioned the meaning of this statement. I knew what she meant immediately. Mehera's mood must be protected, especially before she slept. Over the next 4 years, there were special times a star would sit at the tip of Seclusion Hill. Sometimes it was the moon that perched there. Several times we thought one of the planets was cradled on that tip when the shine was so illuminating. I vividly remember a crescent moon and lone star that rose to that point of the hill. When this happened, I knew it was a night truly glorious in its symbolism. And the reason I thought it was so I'm going off again. Okay. This left such a beautiful impression with me that to this day, I love to see a crescent moon every month in the night sky. And when I see that lone star embraced by the crescent moon, I have a sense and can feel Goher in my heart. And I also feel a closeness with Muhammad because of the crescent moon and the star in the Muslim faith. I truly loved gazing at Seclusion Hill with Goher at the end of the day. It was truly Holy Communion and most sacred, but the splendor could be overwhelming. The first time I saw that magnificent glow of a star atop the hill, cradled at the tip, I just stared in wonderment. How beautiful, I said, with a hint of fascination I felt. The stars are so exquisite and bountiful tonight. The sky must truly be where heaven is and angels dance, I said to Goher. She replied in a matter-of-fact voice, Mara Bacha. Baba told us there are billions of galaxies with stars and planets whose light has not even reached us yet. Mara Bacha, Baba told us, there are billions of galaxies with stars and planets whose lights has not reached us yet. With this one quiet, simply stated declaration of Goher's, I was given a tiny glimpse of how monumental and truly unfathomable the Lord's creation is. With her words still dancing in the night air, Goher then took my hand and we turned to return to the house. She ushered me along the path in the dark, an astounding revelation of God's creation newly ringing throughout my being. The only sound that broke the silence was her sandals, making their distinct shuffling sound on the stone walkway. It still resonates in my heart and my soul. Jai Baba. Any questions are welcome.
I just have a simple question. When you're saying Dr. Bob, what Bob are you talking about?
Robert Aarons.
Bob Aarons.
He's in
That's what
Atlanta. Bob Aarons.
I thought, but I never heard him called Dr. Bob, you know.
Oh, that's I think Shelley and I and Goher nicknamed him that.
Yeah.
Mostly
yeah,
Shelley and Goher, and I just call him that because that's what they called him.
yeah.
Rosalie.
Yeah.
I have a vape in my hand. What do you, never mind, nothing. Go ahead. Is there any other questions?
That was very descriptive and beautiful, Vesta.
Betty, is that the first time you're hearing this?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So, question, please.
It was wonderful. Oh, I don't have any questions. You described it beautifully. Yeah, beautiful as is.
Okay.
Vesta, that part where you Goher says, do you think he forgives me? And it made me think of Baba as a young teenager when the teacher accused him of cheating. He was a Christian brother in school, And Baba says, no, I did not cheat. And the teacher proceeds to whip his hand. And when he's whipping Baba's hand, he sees that he's made a mistake. And he says, oh, please forgive me, Marwan, forgive me. Please forgive me. And Baba says, what is there to forgive? It is all right. It is a mistake. It is forgotten and forgiven.
That's beautiful. See, this is why it's so important that we share stories,
Yeah.
no matter how goofy they sound or how trivial, because the conversation leads to something like this that piqued
Right.
something from Rosalie. I don't remember ever hearing that story.
Oh, I loved
Was
it.
it in Lord Meher?
When
Was it in Lord Meher?
It's in Lord Meher. Yeah.
Wow, and I took one full year to read all the volumes, and I don't remember that story.
He couldn't have been more than 15 years old. It was in the
Wow.
school. No girls were there. And
Amazing.
because he had that incredible memory, especially if he heard poetry that he loved, he could remember it immediately. So the teacher just accused him of cheating, you know?
Yeah,
But
we usually tear down people who know more than we do.
But it's just so beautiful. I mean, for me, it was like music to my ears. If I've ever not felt to forgive somebody, I thought, oh, he was just a teenager. This is God in human form showing us how to be, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Goher, is Goher still on?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, Goher, I want to turn the floor over to you. I want you to ask me some questions because she's your namesake.
Oh my goodness. Well, did she ever talk about that, Vesta? That's what I would like to know.
Talk about what?
When Baba named me, after her.
You
Did
know,
she ever
no, she didn't. But you know, it's not that it didn't matter to her, but
Mhm.
she wouldn't. These people.
I know they're just not into it. To her, probably it would have seemed like it was an ego thing or something. So
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
I'm sure she was pleased, but to go around and say, "Oh, Baba named somebody after me,"
yeah,
and
Yeah.
part of it is not because she couldn't say it with the pureness of it,
right.
but they had to be careful what they said around us because we were goofy as hell,
Yeah,
and we'd
yeah,
repeat things, and sometimes we'd
Right.
repeat it incorrectly or add something to it that wasn't part of the story. So they had to
Right.
be very careful, and they never wanted anybody raising them up. Oh,
Yeah.
I should name my daughter Goher because Baba named somebody's daughter Goher.
right.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I only
Fine.
have my father's version, so I just wanted to know it from her side, you know, like to have that picture in my mind, kind of thing. So that was my only reason for asking her. But
Yeah, no, but I would have loved, it would have been the first thing I said tonight because I couldn't wait to share these stories with you.
yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, I almost canceled tonight. I called Betty
But
because
yeah, but
I've had such a rough week. It's just been a really rough week. But there's you and who's my
Dinku.
What?
Dinku had a question to ask you.
Okay, good, Dinku.
She's there in Bombay.
Jay Baba, my darling, my little Dinku, my favorite name, Dinku.
Thank you. Vesta, I'm sorry I may have missed it, but why did Goher have this deep sense of guilt and that she wanted Baba's forgiveness?
Because she felt him as a doctor. She couldn't relieve his pain. You know, she called other doctors in and Baba would look like there was nothing wrong with him. And as soon as they'd leave, he'd lay down on the bed and, you know, pain here, pain there. My stomach's upset, you know, this and that. And the doctors would come out of the room and say, why did you make me travel this distance? He's in perfectly good health. And so not only did Baba do that to her, but he humiliated her to other professionals. Don't you call me again unless there's something serious. You know, and she had to swallow that.
Yeah, right.
in the
So
end, Can I just
Go
jump
ahead.
in and say that in the end, the last day, I think he even mentioned very clearly and very emphatically that no one should blame Goher for whether, whether she has treated him right, or it's absolutely not, this has nothing to do with her treatment of him. So she is not to be blamed at all for whatever happens. And he said
Can
that.
you, sorry.
Yeah.
I have to mute myself because my dog is just hysterical outside and I have to whistle. And I don't want to whistle in your ear. So
Yeah. No, I was saying that Baba said very emphatically to all the mandali around him that Goher is not to be blamed for whatever was to happen to him. That no one should blame her for her treatment. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And I don't know what's going to be in Shelley's book, but you can imagine a household with a divine presence as Meher Baba, and the person who's got the medical issues on her shoulders, and Baba's doing his own, avatar tricks. You can imagine the things that were said to Goher by people in the ashram because they were human beings. And no one meant it to be evil or angry, but they were expressing their own frustration because Baba wasn't getting better, and who was the one taking care of him? It could have been the night watchman. It could have been a flower pot that had been told to take care of Goher, and they would have complained to the flower pot. What do you mean Baba's still sick? What do you mean you haven't gotten him better? What do you mean you can't find medicine? So, Goher got it from all angles.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that anybody was trying to be mean to her. They were just freaked out that he wasn't getting better. And I think they must have sensed that his time was coming.
Yeah.
So that's that. But
Thank
Goher
you.
was as strong as she, this woman was incredibly strong. What this woman went through, taking care of God in human form in that lifetime, with 5 women in a household that's close together, and an ashram, that's, you can just imagine. You know how it's like when you get together with your family for holiday dinner, right? Some of us, it wasn't as pleasant as other people, but you can just imagine, all those people in that tightly crammed space, where nobody really had their own personal space. Even their bedrooms were open. Even their bedrooms, people came and went, Oh, sorry. It's okay, honey. It's okay. Come lay down. Come here, baby. Come here. That's a good girl. Okay, lay down. Lay down. Good girl, Sojourner. Okay, sorry. So, who else? Jeff, you're really good with questions.
Well, no, what you've detailed is so vivid and clear. I'm trying to think. I've just been listening, taking it in.
Okay.
Let me see if I once asked Goher on my first trip. I said, "Did you ever worry that Baba might send you back to the world again?" I just was curious. That you've been here at Meherazad, that he might one day send you back to the world. And she said, all the time.
Yep.
I was very surprised. In other words, she had no surety that she had a fixed place. They were on their toes. They were, just hanging in by a thread from their side. They didn't have that confidence, and I was very surprised that with her answer. Yeah.
Shelley's going to go into, I think, detail in her book, but Goher was asked by Baba to come stay with him, and she refused in the beginning. No, my parents want me to marry this and that, yada yada. And so he'd send another letter. I want you to come stay with me, and she'd say, no, my parents want me to marry. And then finally he stopped sending letters, and she freaked out.
Wow.
And then when she was asked to come, she was told to tend to the chickens.
Yeah.
Did you know that? She was
Yeah.
told to tend to the chickens. So so Baba would ask her, did you make the right feed? Did you have the right percentage of this, right percentage of that, blah, blah, blah. And she'd think, she'd have these thoughts. Why did Baba call me to tend to chickens? He sent me to medical school and now I'm feeding chickens. And as soon as she had that thought, she heard Baba clap his hands and she turned around and he said, what are you thinking? She said, Baba, you have me tending chickens. You sent me to medical school. Is that why you sent for me? And that changed. As soon as she had that thought and said it out to Baba, everything changed. She was allowed to be the doctor. And then she was asked to come on the New Life.
But Vesta, she had to tend to the mischievous chicken.
Yes.
And he comes to suffer for us.
Yeah.
So she had the worst job possible. I mean, as far as impossible job.
Yep. It was impossible because it wasn't a win-win situation.
No.
Because if she relieved his suffering, then our suffering increases. She's taking away the suffering that he's doing for humanity.
She
But yet
couldn't
she's
take
got to
away.
keep his physical body alive and well to hold that divine quality that, of the avatar.
Wasn't he telling her at times, he must have told her at times, you're doing this, but I have to suffer it,
Yeah, he told her off many times.
He did, yeah.
Many times. He said, this has to be.
Yeah.
This has to be. Okay, Dinku, Goher, Betty, Jeff. Is Irene Ives on?
I didn't see her. I don't think so.
Is Michelle Schaefer on?
Yeah, she's there.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Marvin.
Hi, sweetheart. Oh, and Marv. We have to say Jai Baba to Marv. He came down with a little bit of COVID.
Yeah.
So you get well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You've got to keep that Michelle in line. She's got a naughty streak in her too.
You think he doesn't know it?
I know you wandering minstrels.
Yeah, his fever broke yesterday morning.
Good.
So
Good.
I didn't get COVID.
Good. Yeah. Okay. You gotta do what the priests do in the Catholic Church. As soon as they get a little sniffle, they take a couple little shot glasses of some really good brandy.
Can't have alcohol.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, did you have any questions? We always have these good conversations.
Oh God, questions. I was just thinking about how you reminded me of Dr. Goher's hands. And just the thought of that, because she was the doctor and everybody was expecting her to be God and save God.
Yeah.
But God had to go through something, and I know it sounds like she was completely tormented by what she felt her inability and inadequacy, and
she felt she was letting everybody down too.
And then Baba would be sick and the other doctors would come and he would be fine. And it was like, I mean, obviously Baba was doing work on her so she wouldn't have to come back. So, questions? I don't know. The stories are great.
Just to let you know, Vesta, that here on the East Coast, it's after 11. So, if you
go on to the next story.
Yeah, go on to the next story. I think.
Okay.
That's why I drank coffee to stay up.
Okay, so I've got to.
JC's got to go to work tomorrow morning.
Well, we're all working on ourselves. Yeah.
View speaker gallery. Okay, so I have to get into my. Oh shoot. Oh. See, Betty, I didn't say shit. I'm trying to be a good girl. Oh, how do I get back to my PDF?
Vesta,
Sorry.
probably you can do Alt Tab.
Exit full screen.
Escape, maybe.
Okay, I got it now. Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. This is Goher's grief. When I first visited Meherazad in January 1974, the dream of my childhood had come true. I found myself walking on the sacred grounds of paradise. The moment my foot touched the ground in front of Mandali Hall as I alighted from the rickshaw, my heart skipped a beat. I knew I had arrived. It was not so much about the physical nature of the surroundings or even the visual attributes of the compound that told me this. It was the feeling of tender, divine beauty that enveloped me. It was exactly as I had imagined paradise to be in childhood. When I was young, I often lived in my mind and heart. I created a safe place. I pretended to live in heaven. As a child, I had an unquenchable desire to go to heaven, born from a longing I had to go visit God. I knew as early as I can remember that God was walking on the planet, and all I had to do was find him. I used to tell people that one day I would meet God and have cake and ice cream with him. I grabbed my bag out of the rickshaw as I turned around, and I could peek into Mandali Hall through the open door. I knew this to be where the seat of the Lord was. It struck me that I could touch things that were divine in Meherazad. I even stuck the tip of my tongue out into the air to see if I could taste it. I could. Then I had the strangest urge to get down and roll in the dirt. The Mandali laughed about this when I told them later. Something about the dust left me awestruck. As I walked around Meherazad, it was overwhelming to think that God had walked on each speck. My feet literally were covered by blessed earth. In those early days, 10 pilgrims visiting Meherazad considered a crowd. I do not remember if anyone else was there my first day, but somehow I felt free to let my imagination dance in Meherazad, and it continued for several weeks. His grace must have touched the ache in my heart for me to feel so blessed that he had invited me to fall into a mystical awakening after a long and deep slumber. I felt as if I was walking through a Maxwell Parrish painting that went on forever. It was dreamlike. Everything and everyone seemed to have a divine glow. I believe the fruit from the Meherazad garden had his blessing. The platters laden with seasonal fruit, such as mangoes, papaya, rumful, sitaful, coconuts, and bananas, was most certainly handpicked by Baba, and they all had his divine kiss to be so sweet and tasty. Unleavened bread shared with pilgrims surely had been baked and crisped by a fire lit by the hands of the Lord. I imagined the towels the chapatis and bakri were wrapped in had been used to dry his hands. I loved walking up and down the veranda while running my hand across the door latches, as I imagined Baba's hands grasping the clasp as he entered the room. If I were alone on the men's side, I would walk up and down the veranda several times, back and forth, gliding my hands across these latches over and over again. It was electrifying, intoxicating, really. And I mean, I'm 24 years old. I mean, most of us were in our early 20s. And we just, when we came there was, like Jeff said, it was like our favorite aunts and uncles. It was like coming home. And I did things I would never do in life in the West or whatever. I mean, I didn't care if somebody came to a house. I wouldn't want to touch the doorknob because like the president of the United States was there. But something about running my hand over the latches and knowing Baba had, entered to go talk to somebody in the room or do business or whatever. So anyway, I thought that was kind of a funny thing. So I put that in there so people could see how, I don't know, young or immature or just free I was. On days when there was no clinic, I would sit quietly and listen to the breeze that rustled through the trees. It had to be Baba's breath that was caressing my face. Crows cawing from the treetops brought a smile to my face. Could these be the same crows that broke the silence Baba needed for his rest, and they were shooed away at times? Bullock carts rumbling along dirt paths on their wooden wheels, brass bells clanging on the bullocks, had a rhythmic flow that matched the cadence of the hooves. Had Baba heard them too? These sounds and thoughts all had such a soothing effect on me. What a joy to share something that my beloved had experienced too. Village life went on in the distance. Girls dressed in blue skirts with flower-printed blouses ran alongside boys wearing white pants and shirts as they sang songs while tending herds of goats along the Meherazad boundary. Their melodic voices carried into the compound from the surrounding fields, permeating it with the innocence of children. I enjoyed the laughter of women as it rippled through the air while they walked along narrow paths. Some balanced large metal pans filled with cow dung they would later use to make patties. After drying them in the sun, they were used for fuel. Others carried brass or copper containers filled with water they had drawn from the well. The containers were positioned on a piece of cloth atop their heads that had been twisted into a circle which served to balance their cargo. Sunlight sparkled in the droplets of water that at times splashed out of the container and trickled down onto their heads while they walked back to the village. It was all so peaceful. As I took in the ancient nature of village life, unstained by Western culture, it slowed the rhythm of my heartbeat and uplifted my spirit. I felt a sense of calm and safety. I marveled at the great fortune these people had to be born alongside the outskirts of paradise, and I liked that heaven had a casual nature to it. But most of all, it was the atmosphere of Meherazad, the divine fragrance. I could not see it, but I felt it deep down. Yes, I was seated in heaven, and I loved it. I found the guileless manner of Baba's close ones to be intriguing. They had no pretense. They wore no robes. There were no beads hung around their necks. I sensed their humility without anyone acting pious or humble. I laughed at the thought I had found a home filled with all my favorite aunts and uncles. The mandalis seemed to me to be so loosely bound by the world, almost untangled from the yarn ball of life, yet they could still be so engaging with others. A collection of loose strings, they openly and freely shared the beauty of each magnificently colored thread, claiming no ownership. Each implored us pilgrims to take a thread in hand and tug on it, and encouraged us to explore where it led. I took full advantage of such an offer, and on special days, when I was lucky to find a gold thread in my hand, I knew the day was going to be like no other. I knew the threads had all been loomed by the master weaver. He had created the masterpiece tapestries that were all his companions, and this put me in a state of jubilation. All around the Meherazad compound, threads and strings could be found in abundance. Each perfectly spun thread led to divine discovery without fail. You remember that feeling, Jeff?
Yeah. Oh, it's very. You're really weaving it beautifully.
Okay, good. I always took a thread or a piece of string with me when I left in the evening. I quickly learned the threads were offered with an open hand without expectation of ever being returned. I had no shame. Literally, I had no shame. I had no shame to grab onto two or three threads when I felt it was needed, and that was often. I had no shame to grab onto two. Oh, I could not resist tucking these exquisite pieces of divinely loomed silk and cotton threads into the special pocket in my heart as I headed out, cycling down the approach road back to town on my bicycle. All these lovely treasures were attached in some manner to the mandali. I knew each thread was part of a swaddling in a divine cradle within their hearts, and no one would be denied the opportunity to gently rock that divine baby. Jeff, can you other than me expound on this, because you have a good sense of this, of what it was like to arrive there, spend a day there, and then cycle back home knowing that you had a treasure, you were carrying a treasure with you. I mean, unless you think that's adequate.
No, yeah, I mean, I see it kind of, it was like we went around with begging bowls. And we went to everyone who had met Baba, had seen him and everything, and just got story after story. And at the end of the day, when we'd go to the tomb on our way down the hill, we would be a whole bunch of us. We'd say that was the most magnificent day of my life. And then the next evening, we'd be heading down the hill. No, that was the most magnificent day of my life.
Yeah.
It was just all superlatives. But we were all just, we were we'd wake up and go to clean the tomb at 6 in the morning, and then we'd go back into town, get some breakfast, and we'd go out to Meherazad. We'd be out there all day, and we'd come back into town, get a little bit to eat, and then we go to evening arti, then we go back into town, eat dinner, and then we go and hang out with Adi until midnight. And we did this like month after month. It was insane. But like I say, we were just there, trying to take in every little scrap of Baba's life that we could. It was really, no one told us to do this. We just could not do it.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. It
Yeah.
was pretty amazing. Yeah. Okay. As exquisite as these Meherazad moments were, I also felt palpable pain. I could feel it when I sat quietly and opened my heart, expecting something else to come. It lingered even though it was invisible. The pain I sensed had an innocent nature to it and remained hidden from sight in the beginning. Neither dark or foreboding, I was not overwhelmed emotionally, but when I stilled my mind and sat with closed eyes, I could feel it. The grief and pain ran deep, and each possessed a spiritual strength strong enough to cut through rock. It was like spring water, as it does as it finds its way out of the mountain. And just like a spring flows from within the mountain to its release, grief must flow outward from within the heart in its own unique purifying process. I wondered, could the purity of the spring water quench the thirst of so many aching hearts? As days became weeks, I learned that each of the mandali had their special time and place where grief was expressed, so bits of their pain could be released. In the early years of the 1970s, Dr. Goher used to go into the blue bus just after sunrise. It was here she found privacy and would weep for Baba. Sometimes she shed soft tears, other times you could hear her anguish as she spoke to him. She lamented what she believed were her lack of skills as a doctor to care for her beloved. She begged his forgiveness, apologizing for not being able to help with his physical suffering. She wept as she told Baba how sorry she was for her, and in parentheses, mistaken belief that she had not been able to diagnose him properly and had prolonged his agony. It was heart-wrenching to hear. Several days during the week, I would reach Meherazad at sunrise. By the time I had secured my bicycle and reached the edge of the veranda by the kitchen in front of the dispensary, I might hear her at times. I took my cue from the men, who always remained aloof when she came to the blue bus. This way, they gave her her privacy, which she needed. When the men weren't around, I knew Goher was in the blue bus, and I would turn around and go sit on the parapet at the bridge by the Meherazad gate. I waited to return to the veranda until I heard the voices of the men, as this was a sign that Goher had returned to the house. One day, Goher saw me sitting down on the bench at the end of the men's veranda as she was opening the blue bus door. I was horrified. I had not seen her bicycle and thought I was being discreet. When she called out to me, I froze. I thought for sure she was going to scold me for being an intruder and was shocked when she called out, "Come help me up the steps. I want you to help me move the stretcher in the bus so we can clean." I had a moment when I did not know if I should turn and run away or go to her. Without thinking, I replied with a shaky voice, I'll go sit on the parapet, Goher. I don't want to disturb you." In her inimitable Goher way, she extended her index finger and, shaking at me, exclaimed, "Are you mad? I'm an old lady and my legs pain me. Come help me up the stairs and bring your giant body over here and let me put you to work." Because I was 6 feet tall and I wasn't fat or anything. I was, I had been a runner and a weightlifter and a swimmer before I went to India. So they used to always say I had a giant body. And Muhammad Musk, his nickname for me was Gama, the famous Indian wrestler who was a world champion in the 20s. So Muhammad nicknamed me Gama because I was 6 feet tall. All right, anyway, I was taken aback. When Goher came to the men's side in those early morning hours, we all retreated from the area of the blue bus out of respect and to provide the privacy she deserved. But on this day, I found myself at her side. I opened the blue bus door and helped her up the steps. Once inside, Goher showed me how to clean the interior of the bus. She was meticulous with every detail. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I did not feel cleaning the blue bus was a privilege to serve Baba, and that's the truth. Yeah, that's how immature I was. I was so at the time I was barely 23. I think I was barely 24. Doesn't matter, I'll change it. I was barely 24 years old and struggling to remain tethered to the planet. I was so self-absorbed in my own misery that I carried out such a sacred duty with ulterior, selfish motives. I would have cleaned the blue bus 10 times over just for those few minutes alone with Goher. It was the only reward that meant anything to me at the time. The magnitude of the lost opportunity to be gracious in those moments of his grace did not hit me until years later. I now know that I squandered so much at Meherazad because I so often lost focus on him when I wrapped myself up in my own pain that I had not yet let go of. I trust in his wisdom that there was a reason for this cavalier attitude I was trapped in. Val gave me a long explanation later after Mehera passed away into Baba's arms about what happened to me after that, which will be part of the book. Okay, in the beginning of my time at Meherazad, I was possessed by my own survival needs. It was a constant struggle to behave normally and to hide my upset from the mandali and others. I have so many regrets about some of my sentiments in those early days, especially the time spent in Baba's blue bus with Goher. My focus was on myself and Goher. I squandered his grace in those sacred moments. Now, in my waning 70 years of age, I return to those times of staying at Meherazad, and Baba allows me to relish them anew. And that was an important lesson to learn, and we can all learn that. We've got a different understanding spiritually now after years of loving Baba and reading his words and hearing stories and talking with each other. And so we can revisit those times where we may not have fully grasped what was going on and experience them with a new understanding and a deeper meaning. And that's what happened to me. And I know that's got to be happening to other people, because that's just human nature. When you understand something better, you may go revisit something and refocus and come up with a different conclusion or come away with a different feeling. But anyway, his grace allows me to relive the comfort he gave me, and I cherish each memory. I give thanks to Baba for all that he poured into a cracked vessel, even though he saw so much of it leaked out at the time. Oh, Michelle, that reminds me. I think there's a song there. I was a cracked vessel.
Yeah, I melting Mayor Baba's melting my heart. I think you heard it. Break the vessel so I can hold so that much more.
Yep.
Never hurry cabin. Thank you, Baba.
I give thanks to Baba for all that he poured into a cracked vessel, even though he saw so much of it leaked out at the time. I now realize that he showered his compassion on me despite my careless nature and spiritual immaturity. See, he gives without us even asking. We don't even know sorry, I didn't say it, Betty, I didn't say it. We don't even know what to ask for. I mean, especially in these days, we were young, we were immature, we weren't brought up with this kind of philosophical thinking or spiritual wisdom. We didn't know what to ask for. And he didn't let our lack of knowledge stand in the way of his giving. There's nothing we can do to stand in the way of his giving, but we stand in the way of receiving. I think that's the lesson that I learned. Okay, he showered his compassion on me despite my careless nature and spiritual immaturity. He did not punish me for the cavalier attitude I had about his grace. Instead, Baba picked up my broken spirit, repaired the chalice that held my life, and made it strong and whole. He knew I would eventually come to my senses. His love helped me overcome my weaknesses as he blessed me with his grace through his mandali, even when I did not recognize that it was his gift. Best of all, he made sure that in due time I would understand the lesson and we'd be able to eventually feel its sacred nature. This is how tender Baba is with his lovers. Uh, later in the day, sorry. Later in the day, Erich and I were sitting outside Mandali Hall on the bench to the right of the entry door. I was reviewing some clinic paperwork and he was reading the newspaper. When done, he placed the paper to his side, laying it on the bench. He then reached over and gave my knee a tight slap. With a wad of pan tucked in his cheek, which was a special leaf that is folded into a pouch after being filled with spices, digestives, and a white lime paste, he began to chuckle. What's so funny? I asked as he continued laughing. You are such a child, Vesta, but a truly fortunate child, he replied. We sat for a moment in silence. The pause was pregnant. I had learned to wait quietly and to not speak when I sensed Erich was going to say something profound or make a statement that would shake me up a bit. You are quite a naughty child, yet he showers you with presents. Presents, presents, like a birthday present. He had my attention. He was looking out in the distance before he turned and looked into my eyes and said, Goher trusts you. Don't ever let her down. Tears were in his eyes. He placed his index finger near each of my ears and with his thumbs wiped my tears ever so gently. A few tears had started to overflow from the moat that my lower lid had become, and he never let them drop to my chest with this kind gesture. Then, holding my chin in his hand, he stared into my eyes with so much love. Tears continued to well up and began trickling down my face, but he caught them all. Several seconds passed before he got up and went to his room, leaving a faint scent of roses trailing behind him. Nothing more was ever said about this between us. That moment probably lasted less than a minute, but its import and impact was incredible. And like I said, once they gave a lesson, that was it. The moment was gone and he went on. But I'm sure if I had screwed up, he would have reminded me, remember that talk we had? You're inching close to the boundary there. Be careful. But by God's grace, he never had to have that conversation with me. After Erich's comment, my understanding took on a deeper meaning. Now, when I arrived at Meherazad before Goher would come to the blue bus, I sat on the cement bench and waited for the sound of her bicycle. The pedals and for the kickstand would scrape the stone, telling me that she was here. I sat there in case she called me again. When I saw her, I retreated to the dispensary and puttered around. The old dispensary was in what had been Kakabaria's room at the opposite end of the veranda from the blue bus. Wait. The old dispensary was in what had been Kakabaria's room at the opposite end of the veranda from. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's an awkwardly written sentence. It almost sounds like I was by the blue bus. The old dispensary was at the opposite end of the veranda over by the kitchen where Oliva would make the tea. And that I would sit on a cement bench there. And that's where the old dispensary was. And for a while, it was Falu's room before. The old dispensary was in what had been Kakabaria's room at the opposite end of the veranda from the blue bus. I'll clean that up. After a few minutes, I would come outside and go down and sit on the bench opposite the Mandali hall door. When Goher exited the blue bus, I would help her safely down the steps. Sometimes she would smile. Other times she would say thank you, and she squeezed my hand. She would then hop on her bicycle and ride back to the women's side for Arti. At this time in early 1974, I was not staying at Meherazad, so I remained on the men's side and would have tea with them after taking darshan and saying prayers in the hall at his chair. As I sat on the bench one morning, it so happened that Goher came to the blue bus but did not look at me. Her posture was more bent over this morning, and it seemed as if she was carrying a satchel of rocks on her back. She climbed the stairs and went into the blue bus and closed the door. I quietly went to the dispensary to work. A few minutes passed and I began to hear Goher sobbing, making it hard for me to concentrate on what I was doing. Her sobs grew louder, heart-wrenching, rolling like thunder. I was confused. Should I go to her? Should I stay inside the dispensary and give her privacy? As soon as this thought crossed my mind, there was Erich coming through the door and telling me to go offer some comfort. Just sit with her, maybe hold her hand, he said as we walked swiftly to the blue bus. I will never, ever forget the moment I opened the door and her sobs echoed out into the yard. Seated on the floor at the edge of the foot of the cot that had been used by Baba during his illness, Goher's head was buried in the crook of her left arm as she leaned onto the mattress. She looked so small. I quietly entered and sat next to her and gently rubbed her back. Sorry. A few moments passed and then she lifted her head, turned and fell against me. I wrapped my arms around her and held her for a long time while she sobbed. I was deeply moved, and this time my tears fell out of the empathy I felt for her grief and not my own pain. Because of the deep love I felt for Goher, and by his grace only, I experienced the paradigm shift in Baba's blue bus while he showered us both with unconditional love. My own pain was now seated in the back seat and not at the wheel of the vehicle I had been trapped in as I rambled down the road of my life. I will never forget the intimacy of this moment, ever. Okay. Oh, I've got to get to the next page. God, my fingers. Chemotherapy. I hope it saved my life, but it's made other things. Okay. Shoot, now I'm. All right. It was 1975. Goher's moments. It was around 1975. Goher's moments of outward anguish began to lessen. She could go inside the blue bus to dust or look at his images and bow her head in surrender without becoming overwhelmed with grief. Tears might flow, but sobbing became infrequent. When I gently opened the bus door, I often saw her sitting quietly, contemplative, head bowed at the foot of the cot inside. Sometimes she would ask me to come inside to help move items to clean. While we swept and dusted or used a moist cloth for cleaning, she would tell me in a soft, reverential tone of the times he was ill or how Baba suffered uncontrollable and painful body jerks. One story she always told of in a hushed tone was about the 1952 Prague, Oklahoma automobile accident when Baba suffered severe injuries. She told me how his tongue had been split up the middle, cut in a jagged manner from the back of his throat out to the tip. Blood had poured from the wound. In detail, she told me how she held Baba's hand while the doctor did the suture repair. And I didn't put this in there because I think it'll be in Shelley's book. Baba also swallowed so much blood that he was vomiting blood and stuff too. I mean, it was just a horrible scene. Blood had poured. His tongue had been split up the middle, cut in a jagged manner from the back of his throat to the tip. Blood had poured from the wound. In detail, she told me how she held Baba's hand while the doctor did the suture repair. During the entire procedure, Baba was furiously signing to Baba to not let him utter a sound. "Don't let me break my silence," he kept repeating over and over and over. She said there was an urgency in his gestures. The awe I experienced each time she told me the story never lessened. Instead, it increased with each retelling. There were times after her visit in the blue bus when we would walk back to the house for morning arti when she spoke with such sadness in her voice about Baba's suffering for humanity. As I learned about the suffering the Avatar takes on for us, it was humbling, most certainly an exquisite example of his divinity. Even now I can hear Goher's voice crack as she spoke to her beloved in the blue bus. Sometimes her affect was flat, resignation to the pain that was hers to bear. At times I felt embarrassed to witness what was unfolding. I felt at a loss about how to provide the comfort Goher deserved versus the privacy she may have needed. I had quietly mentioned to Arnavaz what was happening so she would know I felt inadequate at times. She advised me to just be with Goher and to trust I would know when she needed gentle and quiet comfort or wanted privacy. You'll know when she needs to be held. Trust your heart, Maharabacha, she'd say. Your heart is already guiding you. Goher invited you to be at her side right now. Arnavaz also told me she was glad Goher could talk about the medical difficulties she felt while treating Baba because it seemed to lessen the burden of guilt she felt. Arnavaz thought this helped move her through the grief she was feeling after Baba left his form. She would often kiss my cheek after encouraging me to be gentle with Goher. The love and respect these two women had for each other was beautiful to see. They became close friends when Baba sent Goher to live with Arnavaz's family in Daughter. When I first came to stay at Meherazad, Arnavaz explained to me about Baba's order to the women to protect Mehera's mood, telling me the women did not openly share their grief they felt over Baba's dropping his physical form. They purposefully never spoke with each other of the sadness and pain they felt to avoid the possibility Mehera might overhear their conversation and this would cause pain and sorrow to her. Instead, they dedicated the rest of their lives to the obedience of Baba's request to protect Mehera. They found private moments to grieve in solitude so Mehera would not see or hear them weep for Baba. Mehera was to live her life with as little upset as possible. And Baba expected them to keep the atmosphere light, free from distress, and no upset should fall to her. This was Baba's wish, and they took this surrender to his pleasure as a sacred duty. Arnavaz then took my hand in hers and told me, "We expect the same of you, Maharabacha. Don't argue with Mehera, don't ever ignore her, and watch what you say so you are not a source of any upset." Each of the women found their place of privacy that allowed them needed time to grieve for Baba without upsetting Mehera. Goher found her respite in the blue bus. With each passing day, Goher was able to share her life with Baba without becoming overcome by the anguish she felt. When the men no longer scattered when we came over early in the morning, I took it as another sign she felt better. The men went about their morning activity but were quiet when she was there. As we tidied the blue bus, she told me that when pilgrims asked endless questions about life with Baba, it helped the mandali heal from the shock of losing his physical presence. This made me happy, and I saw how perfect his plan is for his lovers, how perfect his care and compassion are for each. When we share his love with each other, the benevolence of the gift increases. And Rosalie showed that to my mom and dad. Rosalie, I'm so appreciative because the rest of my life with my parents was so different, and I'm so grateful to you. I just love you for that. One night while chatting on the men's side with Mani, Goher, Arnavaz, Naja, Rano, Pendu, Bao, and Oliva about Baba dropping his physical form, I said how lucky they all were to live with God. I had told him that this was my childhood dream, to live with God and eat cake and ice cream. Holding his arms stretched outward, both hands with palms facing upward, Erich commented, "We took care of the man who was God." He paused before continuing. "Too often, all of us took Baba's status for granted. You pilgrims come to his home already knowing Baba was God. You all accept this without question." After another pause, he continued, "You have the conviction Baba is the avatar, even though you never saw him." His voice had a slight break in it, and he again paused to regain his composure. "You ask so many questions and look to us for answers, and your questions are significant. We didn't have time for questions with Baba." He glanced out into the distance. "You want to know how we felt and what we thought. You ask about his eyes and demand we describe them in detail. We never sat around and talked like this about Baba." He cleared his throat before continuing. "You want to know what it was like for me to be with him and look at his hands as I interpreted his gestures and not get to look at his face? It's all of you who made me realize I was looking at his face to understand how to express his message and what emotion he wanted to convey. I knew Baba's expressions, the lines of his face, the various looks in his eyes, and I have to remember the details to find the words to share with you about what I saw during those times. You all bring these gifts to us. I'm going to read this again because this was such an eye-opener for those of us there in the early days to be told that we brought God to the mandali. You want to know how we felt and what we thought. You asked about his eyes and demand we describe them in detail. We never sat around and talked like this about Baba. He cleared his throat before continuing. You want to know what it was like, Persia, Sojourner, come. You want to know what it was like for me to be with him and look at his hands as I interpreted his gesture and not to look at his face? It is all of you who made me realize I was looking at his face to understand how to express his message and what emotion he wanted to convey. I knew Baba's expressions, the lines of his face, the various looks in his eyes, and I have to remember the details and find the words to share with you about what I saw during those times. You all bring these gifts to us. Remember, Jeff, how he would tell us, or any of you who were there in the early days, you've all brought God to us? I mean, that was just some heady stuff to be told. Eric seemed to have traveled back in time to be held captive by those sacred moments with his beloved. We all sat quietly, waiting for him to continue. You ask about the scent of his body, the shape of his fingers as he tapped the armrest or gestured. You want to know what it felt like to steady him in those later years. You want details about daily life of the man whose human form embodied the Lord. You forced us to remember him in a manner we did not really think about when we served him. That's worthy of reading again. You ask about the scent of his body, the shape of his fingers as he tapped the armrest or gestured. You want to know what it felt like to steady him in those later years. You want details about the daily life of the man whose human form embodied the Lord. You force us to remember him in a manner we did not really think about when we served him. Isn't that beautiful? That's just so beautiful. And for him to openly share that and to say, we didn't think, I mean, they knew he was God, but they couldn't think of him as God all the time. Again, he struggled to compose himself. We all were struggling for composure, sniffling and clearing our throats. Erich had touched each one of us in this telling, and then he turned to look at me and said, our duty was to the man, and you all want to know about the man who was God. Maybe it's all of you who brought God to us. Isn't that sweet? Again, he struggled to compose himself. We all were struggling for composure, sniffling and clearing our throats. Erich had touched each one of us in this telling, and then he turned to look at me and said, our duty was to the man, and you all want to know about the man who was God. Maybe it's all of you who brought God to us. Just then the clock struck 9. There now, it must be true, referring to the chime of the clock. In typical Erich manner, he turned to me, tears gently trickling down his cheeks. Thank you. You all are his gift to us. And that's important for everyone to hear and share, because he didn't say you are his gift to me or to us. He said you all, meaning all of us, are his gift to us. Because when we go, or when we talk with each other, or even those who never met the mandali, they want to know, well, what was Erich like? These are the things you can share. That he said, you know, that those of us ask questions you know, literally brought God to all of them, and that they think of the pilgrims as their gift from Baba to them. So these are kind of things that we can pass on, and that people can pass on for 700 years. That those who follow the avatar and share his love to those who serve the avatar were the gift that brings God to them, because they were so duty bound. So he brushed the backside of his hand on my cheek and then took my chin and held it for a few seconds. He looked directly in my eyes and said, Baba was our companion. You all see Baba as God, and you know he is your companion as well. And you ask us about the man who is the Lord of all creation, and we are reminded that Baba is the avatar. I ask myself at times, who are all of you? It is through all of you we feel his compassion and mercy. His love for you is unmatched. Never forget this. Thank you. You are all his gift to us. He brushed the backside of his hand on my cheek and then took my chin and held it for a few seconds. He looked directly into my eyes and said, Baba was our companion. You all see Baba as God, yet you know he is your companion as well. And you ask us about the man who is the Lord of all creation, and we are reminded that Baba is the avatar. I ask myself at times, who are all of you? It is through all of you we feel his compassion and mercy. His love for you is unmatched. Never forget this. I was 24 years old and had found spiritual wisdom in a shared truth that empowers us all. Jai Baba. Questions?
Beautiful. You know, just a comment there. You know, what you were touching on, Baba had told them that through the Westerners, or not just the Westerners, through his lovers, you will feel my divinity, and they will feel through you my humanity.
Yep.
Complimentary. That was kind of how he put it, and so it was a great.
Exchange.
Great exchange. They were amazed that we were. Yeah, they were amazed that we were following. You know, Bob, without having met him as man, and we were just hungry to know not Baba as God, but Baba as man. What kind of soap he used, what kind of flavors he, what kind of scents he liked. Yeah, it was a great exchange.
I see. I'm now back on the Zoom so I can see who's on it. Rainey, I'm sure has things about Erich, because she was very close to Erich, things that Erich said to her that are similar to what I'm saying. So if you want to say something, that would be great.
Hard to explain, as you know.
I can barely hear you, Rainey.
It's too hard to explain, as you well know.
Okay. Okay. Who else was there? George,
one thing that I often thought, from when I first met Marnie, I had the image of like Native Americans when they'd cut their wrists, and the two boys would cut their wrists and blend their blood together.
Yes.
The mandali had that ability. You would just move them and they would merge into you and allow you to merge into them, and unspokenly you would be family and know things without a word being said.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Image. Yeah.
George, you were there in those early years.
Yes, I was.
Not Cher.
I was there when you were there.
Yeah.
I know. So yeah.
Do you go to the caves?
The heart. Well, no. I just thinking that I think the experience was for me was and then it was really intense.
Yeah.
It was really overwhelming. I was there for several months, and it was amazing. You know, like what can I say? You know, if I was 21, so I was younger than you, so still am, I think. So I haven't caught up. But you know, I've just, you know, the fact that I even got to India is utterly amazing. Just I didn't have any money to get there, and I got there, and I was there. So anyway, it's just, and I made the money, and I got there. Baba got me there, and I was there. So, but the experience with the mandali, it was so important It was so,
Life changing.
Divine.
it was.
Yeah.
See, you can't explain it. I said so.
No.
Can't explain.
Yeah. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain.
Talking about aunts and uncles or whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, there was so,
More than that, it's like merging and melding and them being you. I mean, when you would communicate
Yep.
with them, they would be part of you. How they could do that, I never knew. And you'd see it do that with each one. But then you would then come away being a little like them. It was an extraordinary exchange.
Yeah.
it was natural.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was natural. It was, we were there. We were unquestionably accepted. We were completely, it was just part, we were there completely in total presence. In our ignorance, as Vesta's saying, we were neophytes to the extreme, but we were there because Baba wanted us to be there, and we were there for the right reasons. So for whatever we didn't know, but the fact is that because our hearts were there, we were, whatever we didn't know was okay. So because
and they were more than willing to take the time to help us. But then it always reminds us that understanding really has no meaning.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, you look backwards now in this hindsight and just thinking about it, but you think, gosh, the gifts that we were given. I mean, the fact that I was able to be the only guest at Meherazad. No one else was there, and to be there at night and alone in Meherazad, and to hear the silence there, and to be with alone with Mansari there, and to have that privilege to be in Baba's tomb with Mansari and be just us there, and to do that, and to have the arti, and I mean, just the moments, and one moment after the other with each of the mandali, to be able to have a moment to just sit down with Padre, and to be able to talk, or just to hang out with Padre, and to talk to him, just to be able to be with Pendu and have Pendu teach me a song, and on because there's each one of the mandali, just to have those chances. Why we were there is because Baba wanted us there. Why I got there, I have no idea how it would be possible, but there it was. And so we have to trust in that the Baba's demand is in our hearts, and if we can't hold on, Baba is definitely grabbing us and holding us somehow. Yep. So we're there. So I don't know. You think about, right, there was so many people who were not there, and we got there, and why us? You always ask that question. How the heck did that happen? But that's us now thinking about that, because our minds are thinking about it. We're kind of going back and wondering. But the thing is that, we're very fortunate to still be here talking to each other about Baba and about the mandali. And the mandali, I think we did meet Baba in our own way, because the mandali were Baba meeting us in our hearts, all of them. We were there. I mean, we were given this gift, so we met Baba that way. And I think the people who did not meet the mandali are meeting Baba too, because they're meeting the heart. And I think that this, I mean, I know that when the first time that I just bowed to Baba and gave my heart to Baba, because I was really wondering about that. And that was darshan, to actually have a darshan that way, to do that. And that was in Myrtle Beach, but before that, but anyway, I just wanted to say that we are very fortunate. All of us have stories. All of us have our own stories, and these, as Vesta, listening to Vesta, Vesta's story is really important. Like maybe, like talking about 40 years ago, some of us would say, well, gosh, it's good. One day we'll have to tell a story about this. But yeah, now's the day we're telling the story, and the story matters. We each have stories. We each have touched things. and there are a lot of them, and we don't even have a clue as to what they are until we say it. Start talking about.
Well, one of the things I want to ask Paula a question. Do you mind?
Oh, please.
Okay, Paula, you were married to a priest, right? Was Paula married to a priest?
Paula Roper?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
I need to get in touch with you. So would you give Betty Lohman your phone number or your email address?
Oh, yeah.
I've talked to you since the last time we had this chat, and I wasn't totally together to have a conversation with you, but I really want to talk with you. If you're up for it.
Yeah, I love that.
So much love for you after that time when we shared a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I just, what a sweet, beautiful soul you are. And I want you in my life more deeply than watching you on a Zoom. I want to know more about you and hear about your life and how Bob has changed things for you. But I also want to talk to you similar like we were talking about, because I've had the same feelings of being unworthy or not deserving or whatever. And I think the time is right, because you asked the right questions to tell me that you're open for letting go of a lot of stuff, and maybe you just need to talk. I don't know. And I don't mean to be intrusive, but I just feel inwardly prompted to tell you that I love you and want to hear more about your life.
Wow. I appreciate it, Vesta, and I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, good. So give Betty Lohman your phone number and your email address, and let's start this up, because I've really enjoyed Sonober and listening to Marion talk about her things. And Rainey always has wonderful stories.
Mm-hmm.
And other people here as well.
To recommend to people is that my first husband, Stephen Hine, who's very ill now, who wouldn't be able to tell a story like we are, he went to India with high quality equipment in 1974. And there are 24 incredibly deep interviews done in 1974 with each mandali on YouTube called Mandali Moments. They're preserved beautifully over the years and then enhanced and digitized by a friend of his, and they're now on YouTube. All 24 of them are called Mandali Moments YouTube. And you will experience what we used to experience around these mandali in the early 70s, when they were just so vulnerable and real and natural and amazed by us all, actually. So do look up. I'll put it in the chat as well.
Oh, Rainey?
Yeah.
I have a question for everybody about this, exactly this. I think, Jeff, you might have mentioned something about this in the previous meeting, but the first Air India 747 flight that went I don't know what year it was, but Erwin Luck was on it. He went to India and he did the same thing. He did some amazing films, and they're all black and white films of the mandali, and he interviewed, all did the same. And we went in the Miami Baba group, I think it was around 72, or I think it was. He showed it to us. We all saw that. We saw these films, and they're quite amazing. There was quite a bit of footage, and I've never seen it since. This film is, I've never seen it, but I mean, I saw the films, and I mean, I know they're there because I know the story behind them, but at this point, so I don't know if anybody else knows about it.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because the LA Archives, I worked with Charlie McReynolds, who runs, who basically takes care of our archive division. We got 100, it took me 2 years of being very careful with Erwin to have him release 100,000 feet of 1971 filming that he did.
Yes.
Over 100,000 feet. And he finally gave them to us, and we redigitalized them, and we synced all the sound because some of the audio was done on a cassette. And so Charlie had to go through each frame and make sure that the lips were making, the right movements with the sound. It took him months to do that, and we're just now releasing them on the Meherazad website, and they're also on YouTube. But there are all these incredible interviews. Erwin went all around the world, from Iran all over, interviewing people who knew Baba. There's people I never even heard of that have incredible stories, and they're all up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes, we saw one of them of Mehera, I think at the Meherazad harvest, wasn't it? That Betty, that we saw one of them. Absolutely astonishing.
You're at the tree?
I think it was at the Meherana. I don't know if that ended up on YouTube, but it had Mehera in 1971. Looked like the Puna Club or somewhere, giving a very intimate interview with Erwin.
Marion, what did you think about the things that Eric said? Because I loved your perspective when you were talking about, your own life and a couple of weeks ago, and things that you were going through and experiencing.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Yeah.
So I was just wondering, like, when I was reading anything, if anything, like, struck you, because I appreciate the wisdom you bring to these conversations. I'm wondering, like, just what struck you, and then I'm going to ask Sanober the same thing.
I didn't have any questions, and I wanted to tell you that a lack of questions was only a reflection of the deep experience I was having while you were reading. And I think that's what's affecting me so deeply, is being in the experience of your narration. And that's the treasure in your bringing this forth. So I don't have really any comments except knowing that I'm in the right place at the right time. I don't ever have any reasons for anything anymore, but knowing I'm right where I need to be, and I'm grateful.
Good.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Yeah. Yeah. We could take a break at this point.
Can we keep the recording going, Betty?
Yeah, we could take a break at this point for those who are, and then it's up to Betty.
How about giving us 15 more minutes, Betty? That's all I'm good for.
Betty, I don't know if Betty's hearing you.
She is.
I'm hearing you.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you keep recording for 15 more minutes?
Sure, of course. Yeah, that's okay. Okay.
Hey, Vesta, I want to just share. Marvin headed out, and he's had COVID, but he tells his experience. I'll tell it quickly, but he went to Meherazad. He didn't know really much about Baba, or no one gave him any orientation. He's just wandering around Meherazad, and he sees some of these, little tombs and things like that, and he's doesn't just kind of disoriented, and he kind of wanders up to the hill there and kind of stumbles upon Baba's samadhi, the tomb there, and he wanders over, and Nanakir is there and gives him a hug, Jai Baba, welcome home, and everything, and kind of indicates to go into the tomb, and he goes in there, and he comes out, and Nanakir gives him, like, one of those little orange candies, and then almost immediately Nanakir says, I need to go someplace, can you just stand in for me while I go? So so Nanakir takes off, and immediately this car comes right up by the tomb, and these ladies get out, and they go into the tomb. They all kind of quickly go into the tomb, and he's kind of standing out there. There's nobody else. He's the only one there. And then after a while, maybe 15 minutes, the women come out. The first lady comes and he gives her an embrace and says, "Welcome home," and gives her some candy. And and it turned out to be Mani. It turned out to be the women mandali. And Mani says to the rest of them behind her, she says, "Did you hear that?" And they're like, and so he's like, "Welcome home." He's welcoming all these people. He doesn't even know who they are. And they get in the car and they're laughing in the car. He doesn't know why they're laughing. He's not that funny or anything like that. And they take off. But the next day or so, he goes to Meherazad and he sees these were all the women mandali. But Baba gave them through his kind of not knowing anything such a nice humorous moment. But they had a great laugh over that of this unsuspecting guy welcoming them home. Anyway, that was Marvin Schaefer. See.
Well, James Saha, am I saying that right?
Jay
Yeah,
Simha.
Jai Simha.
Oh, Jay Simha. Where's your better half? I don't see that beautiful woman that you had with you.
She's just taking rest.
Okay. Tell her I missed her and that I send my love.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
Okay. So. Oh, wait. Just a second. Is Vilma with you? Oh, just a second. Gloria just came. Just 1 minute. Oh, Ernesto. Estoy hablando de la Biblia con mis amigos. Sí. Aquí está el apoyo, un poquito de apoyo de gelatina. Oh, bueno, gracias. ¿Puedes sacar ese plato con la macarona y poner en la refrigeradora? Por favor. Bueno, y también si hay un vaso de leche, porque me gusta tomar en la media de la noche. Bueno, se lo pongo. Ernesto, ¿cómo estás? Bien. Bien, gracias. Bueno. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Are you there?
We're all here.
We're all here.
Okay.
Estamos
Okay.
aquí.
Okay, estamos aquí. Yeah.
Hey, Vesta, I have a question.
Okay.
I looked at there you were with Goher. How did that happen? How did you get to be so close? Were there other people around? Was it you special, or how did that work? That you were just so intimate with her?
I have no idea how to answer that other than there wasn't a lot of people to choose from. So they got stuck. They got stuck with plan B.
Oh.
And I think it wasn't so much that I was a helpmate to Goher. I think they saw that I kept Mehera light, because I would joke with Mehera, but I was appropriate. I mean, I never swore in front of Mehera except for that one time when that was coming through the window.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh.
Mehera loved hearing stories from my childhood and things about my family, and just because my family was a little crazy, but crazy in a good way. And so I just think because I was a nurse and they saw me helping people at the Armatizi and asked me if I wanted to come work in the dispensary, and it just graduated. And I knew I didn't want to come back to the States or back to the West. I mean, I had gone there to end my life, and so they were giving my life back. So, the person who gives you that gift, you want to, keep unwrapping that gift when it's just so multifaceted. I don't know how to explain that.
That must have been a real lift, a real boon to them to see that Mehera was so happy and would laugh with you. That makes a lot of sense. That they would, be so happy to see her happy.
Well, and I don't know why Mehera was so protective of me. She didn't like anybody criticizing me, which was kind of funny because they nicknamed me Mehera's Golden Girl. And so they'd catch me and they'd give me some grief about something I had done or said. And somebody would say, "Oh, be careful what you say to her, because if she goes and tattles to Mehera that you criticized her, you're gonna get in trouble with Mehera." So that was always the fun joke. "Oh, watch out, she's Mehera's Golden Girl." You know, that kind of stuff. She can't do any wrong.
Now, Mehera was totally, she talked about you, you're brave, how brave you were, and she's right. She was right, of course. You know, that was not easy, you know, having stones thrown at you and stuff. I mean, cuckoo. Mehera,
Yeah, but that's how desperate I was that I tolerated that.
yeah, but Mehera knew. Mehera could see in people's hearts. I'm sure of that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why me, but I'm glad it was me.
Amazing. It's just, yeah. What I'm so glad you're getting to tell the story now.
Well, what's interesting is, you know, everything, if something's negative, there's always the opposite, right? So what I'm going through, you know, most people think it's so negative, but by Baba's grace, I've been able to turn it into a positive and get through it without complaint or trying to be as balanced as possible and still remain cheerful. But I have to tell you, poor Rick Chapman and Ursula and Alexandra Kahns and Renee Busanich and Betty Lohman getting these late night calls with me sobbing, "Help me walk through this. I can't go another second." They've been getting those calls that you don't hear. And they're the ones that have been keeping me going. Baba's used them. And I'm so grateful for each of you. Betty, you've been a lifeline. Michelle Schaefer's been a lifeline. Rosalie's been a lifeline.
You just make everybody your friend. If you're pretty amazing, Vesta.
I can't hear you.
You make everybody your friend. It's really amazing. I feel lucky.
Well, I figure I better do it right from the start before you get to know me.
Vesta.
So Goher, do you have any other questions?
No, my dear. I'm just enjoying hearing you. That's all. You're so descriptive and paint such a vivid picture of the time you spent with my dear namesake. So I'm very grateful to hear your stories.
Maybe Betty can send you the stories so you can just have them, and then you'll get the book.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Let's make sure I send you what you want me to send. We'll talk. Yeah.
Necesito mejor. ¿Tiene una pregunta, Gloria? ¿Está bien? Todo está bien. Oh, bueno. Muchísimas gracias. Oh, gracias. Gracias, Ernesto. ¿El gusto es suyo? Bueno, te quiero mucho.
These are her neighbors. They take care of her.
Y tengo un buen noche. They just got me a potty chair.
Oh.
Oh.
Only just now? Wow.
Yeah, because I haven't been wanting to be tempted to go to the toilet and fall again, because that's where I was making my falls. The 4 worst falls I had where I thought I broke my hip was coming from the bathroom.
Oh.
You know, because the thing is with my energy, it's like all of a sudden the plug is pulled. And so I don't know if it's going to be 20 steps or 15 steps. If I knew it was 20 steps, I'd know only to take 10 steps and then 10 steps back to bed. But when I go out 20 steps and the plug is pulled, I'm on the floor. Boom.
Oh.
It's a horrible feeling. And so I've become very extremely cautious. But it'll be nice not to have Gloria have to come several times during the day to empty the chamber pot, you know.
Good.
But I've learned to give up on a lot of things. I have absolutely no more shame about my body. Between my legs has become Grand Central Station. You know, I've had everybody and their mother between my legs, trying to figure out how to get rid of all that inflammation and the pain and the blisters and the radiation burns and blah, 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 blah.
And it's
But anyway.
better. Yeah, it's getting better.
Yeah. So I guess Rosalie, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just grateful. I will say one thing of the people. See, I didn't get back to India. The last I was there is when I would have wanted to be there before Mehera passed. I won the ticket. I got back, and I mean, Baba really wanted me to be there because they pulled my ticket, and I was in India at the time. And Adele Walken says, "Pick someone else. She's already there." And the group said, "No, Rosalie won." Thanks my group karma. I got my time. I got 6 months around Mehera.
Good. Rosalie, that's when we met you, I think.
Who's speaking?
George.
George
and Shelley.
Oh, maybe. I've had 7 times there.
Well, I don't know. This was in the 80s, so I don't know.
86. Oh yeah, I was there in the 80s. No, yeah, but that was the last time when I was around Mehera. But what I wanted to say is, because and then Erich passed, they're all passing, and Baba's not giving me the go-ahead to come. And finally I thought, geez, I'd like to see Goher. So, I mean, I really wanted to see her, and then she went. And so now this is a gift to me, because she just was such an angel. I mean, I'm just so grateful. She gave me a gamma globulin shot. I didn't feel the needle go in or nothing come out. I mean, she was like an angel. And then her touch, how many people can touch your chest with such purity? Yeah. So I'm very grateful to the sharing, Vesta. This is very important, and the fact that she had to suffer being his doctor, Baba. I mean, that was just suffering, but so beautiful. She's on that film, Eternal Beloved, and it's my favorite shot of her. She's speaking of Baba's skin was translucent. I mean, it's like very little of Goher on film. So I thank you. This is precious. It's very precious.
She did not like her photograph being taken or being filmed.
Yeah. But somehow she slipped for those 3 minutes, and I'm glad she did.
Yeah.
Goher,
do you have something to say, Goher?
No, I need to take your leave now. I'm so sorry, but I've enjoyed you very, very much. Thank you for all you shared.
Okay.
It's been delightful.
All right, Jai Baba.
I
Sweet
need to say
dreams.
Jai Baba.
All right, Sanober. Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, Vesta.
Okay, where's mommy? Where's mommy? Where's mommy? Is mommy praying right now?
No, she's in the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Jai Baba.
Tell mommy I asked after her.
I will. Thank you.
Vesta, did you get Kashmir?
Yes, I did. I haven't looked at it yet. I haven't looked at it. I just flipped through it. Rosalie sent me the book about Baba's visit to Kashmir that was done in artistic rendering in the story of his time in Kashmir.
It's so precious. It's precious.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Is there anything, Paula, do you have anything to say? When a woman's quiet, that usually tells me she's got a lot to say.
Good night, Jai Baba.
I think it's hidden. Actually, Vesta, I did. After last time, I was thinking about what you said about Mehera and how she stuck up for you, and how people couldn't. That's what a mother does. And when a mother loves her child, no matter what, that's what a mother does. And I thought about that, and it was, I mean, she's just truly is your mother, and she was going to protect you. And I also thought about how, you know, how Baba would act innocent and like he didn't know things, but he knew everything at the same time. I believe that about Mehera too, that she knew everything, even though it seemed like she didn't. And she would stand at your door, and she, just like you wouldn't let, you know, a rabid dog attack them, she was not going to let a rabid dog attack you. You know, so anyway, that's what I was thinking about, and I think it's true.
Well, you can say that, I wouldn't. Huh,
Well,
Betty? Huh, Betty?
I guess.
She can say that, but I would never, right?
It's like I can't say the things that you said about me. I don't, it's like, what, who are you talking about?
Yeah. Well,
Or
I'd
that
like to
way.
introduce you to yourself.
Hmm. Maybe we can do that for each other.
Yeah.
Hey,
We all have a lot to learn from each other.
Does anybody have a last quote before we disappear into the ether? Rosalie, you got a quote there.
I have one because it's Baba talking in the mystical language about serving us. Give me 1 second of your whole existence, and I will give you more of that which I have to give, and which I am giving unendingly in every ordinary and extraordinary way of me as a human, selfless servant of mankind, as love.
Thank you.
That's
Oh,
so-
I see Mona's on here. Mona's in Florida, so it's late for Mona.
No, Mona's in India.
India.
It's
Oh,
late.
Mona's in India.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was Mona in Florida.
No, it's one in India.
Well, hi, Mona. Do I know you?
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, hi Vesta. I believe I would be meeting you for the first time on Zoom now.
Good.
But
Nice
I
to meet
hear
you.
today talking to Betty and Rosalie.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said we've never met in this lifetime, but I meet you on Zoom today. I did hear you talk to Rosalie and Betty the other day. And just last night, Ralph was mentioning that I should connect with you as well.
Oh, good. Good. So, Betty, send her my email and phone number.
Okay, I'll do that. She's on WhatsApp. Well, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Mona, Jai Baba, glad to meet you. Where in India are you?
Bombay.
Oh, you're in Bombay. Okay. I can't. I think you're on mute. But anyway. All right.
Okay.
Okay, Vesta. Many, many thanks. And I'm glad this is all recorded because people are will have it forever.
Oh, Sonneberg got her haircut.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
What are you afraid it's going to grow?
It's the heat of Bombay.
It's hot
It is
there.
so hot.
She got too close to New Mexico, and Geronimo tried to scalp her.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sonneberg knocked him in the nose, and he went home to his. But he sort of got a lot of her hair.
There you
I
go.
got a pandemic cut.
Pandemic
It's very
cut, yeah.
long.
So,
Anyway,
okay, everybody, it was lovely to see all of you. Thank you so much.
Jai Baba, yeah.
Thank you, Vesta.
And Robin, is it Oppenheim?
No,
Oh, is it?
Robin
No.
Vogel.
Ogle. Okay.
Yeah.
Say
Vogel.
Baba, Robin.
Yeah.
Jesse, you're talking us under the table. You're going strong and we're fake.
Okay, you guys, go to bed, you bunch of weaklings.
Okay.
No, Marion is still there.
Oh,
Yeah. We're here on the East Coast. We're
All right.
East Coast. We're 12:30.
all right.
All right. Well, Jay Meher, Baba, you and
Jai
Jeff,
Baba.
I hate to bring this up, but Jeff, I hate to bring this up, but you really need your beauty sleep. So get your big butt to bed.
Yeah, I do. Yep, I got to wake up and do something. Yeah. All righty.
Yeah.
All right.